Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another wild and woolly week on the stock market with the sense of things. Jeff and Ron here. Today, we're going to go over a little bit of course, what happened in history. Ron's got some good stuff on credit cards and gas, inflation pricing, 20 years of mortgage history, and then the debt of the top 7 stocks in the S&P 500 and NASDAQ. I'm going to cover a couple little economic points today, and then I did an in-depth analysis of Chairman Warsh's testimony or his presser this week, which there's really what I consider 4 key points that came out of that I think are going to shape the future of the Fed as we go. So stay tuned. We'll be right back on in just 1 second. Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. Ron, how are you, my friend?
Good. I'm all excited and giddy. My hair is standing up on the back of my neck for earnings.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Microsoft was up, Meta was down.
Yeah. Which at least I will say the market just is bipolar at this point. It's either tech and AI or everything else. And it was like everything else up until this morning. And then now it's the exact opposite. And money is just
Microsoft's the
slamming
biggest
around.
laggard of the top 10 this year.
Yeah.
And people
Lose it.
like,
Doors.
you know what? They will figure it out. I don't know how
Yeah.
long it's going to take. They'll figure it out. It's like Google. They'll figure it out. Apple,
Yeah.
though they were lagging behind too. They figured out they're at an all-time high. So
Yeah.
they have the smartest people in the world. They'll figure it out.
They're also the biggest companies on the planet for a reason. It wasn't that they lucked into it or they've just ambled along.
Will they have the momentum quarter to quarter? Probably not, but they'll figure it out.
But you look at the Microsoft numbers. I was looking at the earnings on that. Azure is up 47%. That is insane. On that big of a one, it's probably the oldest of those cloud platforms that are out there. And don't get me wrong, I thought it was absolutely terrible. And I still think it's terrible, but it's a lot less terrible. And that Microsoft ecosystem is just out there in the big companies, and it's going to continue to be. So they're improving well. I'm excited to really hear Amazon. I just happened to hear an interview with their head of kind of the AWS AI part of the company, and it was off the chart. That part of the company is growing so insanely fast that it's going to be interesting to see. They were saying that it took, I think I said this last week, they were saying it took 6 years for AWS part of the company to reach $1 billion in sales. It has taken less than 3 years for them to reach $12 billion AI. So it's that, I think the Amazon store part of the company, I think is going to be such a non-starter with the company, and they're making money on the AI and the cloud side of the business. And it doesn't really matter what the online store does.
And Amazon reports tonight.
Yep.
And they got a pretty reasonable multiple. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Yep. And Apple tomorrow. So, I think the big 4, I call these first 3 the 3 amigos. So, they throw their hands on their hips and kick their hips out. And
remember, the top 5 companies is 30% plus or minus of NVIDIA's revenue.
So keep spending money, guys. All right. What happened this week in history?
Some interesting things. 1776, delegates signed into the Declaration of Independence. And I think this is interesting because I believe if you polled 1,000 people and you said, hey, when did the delegates sign the Declaration of Independence? They would all say July 4th. And here it is. It was the end of July because Thomas Jefferson wrote it as the Declaration. John Hancock was the president of the Congress or in charge of it, but it wasn't until this week that they all signed it as we know.
They had to have it printed. That was the thing. It was
actually what it was. It was wild. I've been watching a documentary on Netflix, excellent, called The American Experiment. So the original one was small, but then they had a bigger one that it was then obviously then transposed to. So
yeah,
pretty cool.
But do you know the one interesting thing about the original document?
What's that?
There was actually only one signer of the original document, John Hancock.
That could have been on July 4th, but the
Yeah.
delegates,
The delegates and actually the full suite of delegates didn't sign it for almost a year.
there was 2 or 3 that did not, they
Yeah.
abstained.
Yep.
Quick call. All right. 1861, world's first weather forecast published. Don't ask me why I put this in here, but I find it interesting because there are people that are obsessed with the weather. So I thought it was interesting. 1861. Hey, the Weather Channel is on TV for a reason. People watch.
I the scary thing is when I was traveling a lot, of course, television, the TV in hotels was always terrible and nothing I wanted to watch. The Weather Channel has some of the coolest, like live action, reality type shows and stuff like that. I would watch those for hours on end.
I hear you.
I don't do that when I'm at home, but I do that when I'm on the road.
We've had a lot of car manufacturer news over the last
Dude,
couple
yeah.
of months. 1909, General Motors buys Cadillac and keeps adding to their stable. 1949, plane crashes in Empire State Building.
Just heard that this week. Yeah, it was a military
There's
bomb.
been quite a few planes that have crashed in New York buildings. Why would you want to be above the 10th or 15th floor on any of them?
I don't really want to be in New York, period. So it solves the problem.
1945, USS Indianapolis torpedoed after delivering the atomic bomb. What movie was famous for one of the characters telling the story?
Of course, Jaws.
Very
Oh,
good.
man.
Quint
was on the
Tattoo.
USS Arizona. He had the tattoo removed.
Which is why he was
Here's-
so obsessed with hunting sharks.
Here's to your leg. Here's to my leg.
That's right. Remember what this was? She broke
Yeah.
my heart. There it
It
is.
broke my heart. Mary Sue, whatever.
1958, NASA is created. 1972, comedian George Carlin is arrested for his 7 dirty words routine. Charges were later dropped. Now, I will tell you, I never went out of my way to watch George Carlin. He was all right. He
Wow.
just seemed like the old man next door, get off my lawn, even when he was in his 30s. But he
Mhm.
definitely had some great routines, and this was one
God,
of
he
them.
was hilarious.
I loved him. My favorite routine was him talking about getting older. You're pushing 50, and
Yeah.
that's a great routine too.
That's the thing with Carlin. And my wife and I were talking about this the other day. We're like, Carlin and Red Fox and that generation of comedians. Oh my God, they would be canceled today. And I'm like, no, they wouldn't, because they don't care. They just literally, they
What's
wouldn't
that?
care. Yeah, they wouldn't care at all. They would just keep doing what they did best.
1940-74, House begins impeachment of Nixon. The one I didn't put in here was he actually, I think in this week in history, he turned over the Watergate tapes per subpoena. I think once he did that, then they began the impeachment proceedings. 1976. If you've ever watched a documentary on it, it's crazy. David Berkowitz, later to be known as the son of Sam, murder's first victim. I read the article again because I forgot and then I remembered. Do you know how they caught him?
I don't remember. You know what? I just saw the movie probably about a year or so ago again. I can't remember how the heck they caught it.
Unpaid parking ticket. That'll tell you the level of detective and police work because they did all the traditional things. And here
find 'em.
was an unpaid parking ticket in the area where there was a murder, a couple of murders, and they just traced it back to him. And then they found submachine guns or whatever. Yeah, kind of crazy.
And he was defended by my cousin Vinny.
Oh, that's right. 1976, Bruce, Caitlyn Jenner wins the Olympic decathlon.
The most amazing
One of the
movie
most
in
famous
history.
artists. I'll tell this story very quickly. I'll shorten it up. I remember in the early 90s, remember the news in the supermarkets, the rags, the aliens are coming, the aliens had sex with me, all that those crazy things. I remember one of the headline stories back in the early 90s. I can't remember which one came in the world or whatever, with a picture of Bruce Jenner saying he's going to be transgender turning into a woman.
Yeah.
Of course, everybody's like, oh, stop.
Oh, yeah, whatever. Yeah.
Man of man, won the
Yeah.
decathlon. And here it is 30 plus years later.
It happened.
Chopped off or not, but who cares?
I think the thing that impressed me most about him, I saw him speak at an insurance conference because he actually That's what his job was. He was an insurance guy because his dad was an insurance guy, and he was talking about the training that it took to do the decathlon. And he goes, 9 hours of my day every day was spent training for
Yeah,
that.
12 years for 1 week in history. Then you know what he did? I think it was within a couple of months after he won it. Person that supported the most, he divorced his wife
Yes,
or went
because
to
he wanted to wear a dress. That's
1978, Animal House,
yeah.
released in theaters. The first of several National Lampoon movies. There's only one good one after it, 1980
Mhm.
Caddyshack. They should have
Yes.
stopped there.
Yes, I agree.
1981, The Wedding of the Century. Charles and Diana wed. Boy, we knew that was going to last forever, didn't we?
Yeah. If you watch The Crown, you can see why. Yeah.
I don't know why I had this in here, but cannibal and serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer is caught.
Well, we had to get another one in there with Son of Sam too.
Yeah, but this was beyond.
He was a psycho. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough to say one is worse than the other, but this was worse than the other. Do you know what they did about 25, 30 years later? I shouldn't
No.
even be telling this. He had no money. Everything was taken away from him. He was put in jail. I think it was for 300 years, right? He'll never
Yes.
get out. They auctioned off many of his items. One of his
Mhm.
items people bought was a fork. Because they're like, do you realize whose fork that is and what he used?
He could have eaten people with this. Wow. Yes.
But
Wow.
there are ghouls out there that
I used to work with one. I used to work with a guy who was obsessed with serial killers. When I worked for one of the largest financial firms, he was obsessed with serial killers, and he collected items from John Wayne Gacy and all. They're
they have
strange people.
podcasts for that stuff.
Yes, they're weird. That and the ones that the women that want to date them and stuff. I'm like,
Uh-uh.
okay, this is just weird.
They get married.
Yeah.
Credit card spending and gas prices. So credit card spending was up during this period of time, mainly because of the World Cup.
Okay,
And
makes sense.
yep, and what we're still seeing here is some slowing in some other areas. Probably during the summer, not as many people are going to the department store, but it should be interesting. Look how much gas has gone up, but it's been a combination of things, which is why I found this other chart that obviously people travel a lot more during the summertime, but the gas prices have ticked up. We'll see where it is over the next couple of weeks. Amazingly, we're still bombing and gas has come down, but
Yeah, you look at it
for
for
many months.
yeah,
The military
2022 was
operations
yeah.
will continue on for quite some time.
2022 was a mess, but you look at this year, it's like yes, it's up, but it's not up to the point where it's just blowing people out of the water.
No.
And it's within striking distance of where we were a year or so ago. So it's been amazing. And it's
Something
interesting.
the media latches on to and loves to.
Oh, of course. Yeah, they'll beat on it nonstop. But when you look at the numbers, you're like, okay, yes, oil is up, but it's not up anywhere near what I would have thought it would have been at this point with disruptions that have happened. And it was like the market kind of shrugged off the whole Houthi thing with Saudi Arabia. But I think what it's done is you kept poking the bear with Saudi Arabia. And now Saudi Arabia is like, you know what? I'm going to start kicking the living, you know what, out of everybody at this point.
Yeah, but I think we'll be talking about that for a while.
I agree.
So mortgage rates. I brought this up because everybody was blaming Biden and blaming Powell for the mortgage rate. The Fed rate has nothing to do with
No.
the 30-year. It's the 20 and the 30-year Treasury because that's how the banks manage the risk on it. And I got to tell you, I was wrong. I really thought mortgage rates with the Fed rate coming down in the bond markets, that it would be sub 5.5 at this point, and it's not even close.
It's hanging in there. And I'll go over a little bit of that. Chairman Warsh made a kind of a little point about this in his speech too, which was, I think, interesting. Yep, you there?
Oh, there you are. I thought you locked up there.
Nope. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
I thought you were going to mention something. All right. Here we go. Top 7. You know, I refuse to use that word to describe them. Look at where we were 15 years ago.
Yep.
As the amount of debt, because these have been the largest companies. They've been getting larger, and they've been basically building and expanding and exploding their business through just organic growth and cash flow. And
Mhm.
here they are with basically financing a lot of their AI debt
Yeah.
or their AI investment, excuse me. They're
Mhm.
financing it with a lot of that. This cannot be sustainable. Obviously, we all know it's not, but how long? I don't know. What are your thoughts on this? Because they got to be having very favorable interest rates. They're not paying the same interest rates you or I are.
No, of course
So it's
not.
debt.
Yeah, they're floating these bonds in the on the stock market and or on the bond market, and they're all AAA credit. They're definitely not paying the rates that even my company would pay and anything like that. So I personally think it's not necessarily a bad thing to have debt on the books. Traditionally, they've carried zero debt. And yes, they've added a little bit there, but okay, so it's what, 500 billion in total debt for the entire seven companies. Four or what, six of the seven of those are trillion-dollar companies at this point. The debt per the size of the companies is really not that outlandish.
I hear you, but this is what I would have liked to have seen. The debt for the other 493.
Yeah, to see
I
where that
bet you
is.
it's not that. I bet you total it doesn't equal that.
But I guarantee you as a percentage of capital or market value versus what the debt is, I guarantee you it's way higher with the other 493. That percentage, I bet you, is way higher. It'd be interesting to see that.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. All right. What do you got?
Let me go real quickly here and share my screen. Let me figure out where the heck that screen is here. Hold on. There we go. Had to move it to see it here. All right. So, a couple things on the economy, the economic calendar that I think are interesting. We got GDP this morning. That's lagging a little bit. Now, year over year, it's way higher than what the expectations were. Or actually, no, it's not way higher. It's 1.5%. Personal consumption expenditures, 3.2 versus 2.1. That is, I think PCE is staying up there a little bit more. If we look at, like, out of the way here, the personal income and outlays. So this is really PCE here. Month over month up 0.2. It was consensus 0.3. Month over month here, 0.3 versus 0.4. The PCE price index was actually down where it was supposed to be. Year over year, still 3.7. So it's hanging in there. So one of the things I wanted to really do is get a little bit of an analysis of Chairman Warsh's speech that he did this week, because I really think it told a lot. And I'm not sure if the market quite gets Warsh, because he's really a straight shooter and he doesn't beat around the bush like the last three Fed chairmen we've had. I think the last one that we had that was so straightforward and out was Greenspan. The rest of them, when you would listen to them, literally it was just from them. So some of the things that came out of here, I really pulled four things. He was emphatic about that they are holding steady with rates. No rate cut, no rate hike at all. He just was flat out, we're not looking at either right now. The Fed voted 9-3 to hold rates at 3.5 to 3.75. He's,
By the way, the three dissenters wanted a rate hike.
yeah, I know, which is just idiotic. The economy, he said, the economy remains resilient. Labor market remains solid. With the one thing I did not cover is that this week's unemployment report actually was way lower than they expected. They were expecting 305. It came in at 187. And that's been really declining rapidly, especially when you looked at what the estimates are versus what it's been. It's been really declining for about the last three to four reports that have come out. He did state, though, that the inflation is still above target. So they don't really see an urgency to move rates yet, one way or another. He did reiterate, and he made a very big point of this, there is only one target, and that is 2%. So he basically said, there's no soft inflation target. We're not like, yeah, we want to, but we'll take 2.5 or whatever. They are focused on 2%. He also said 1 month of lower inflation is not enough for for them to make any decisions. He's really stressing restoring Fed credibility, which is his biggest priority, and that the inflation fight is not over. his base case is we're going to be higher for longer. And he'll relate that in this last point. The new Fed philosophy, let the markets price the economy. And he made a point of saying, play the ball, not the referee, that Treasury yields, they've risen. And his belief is the reason that they've risen is the Fed has stepped back from being the one that provides forward guidance, and they're letting the market make decisions. And that's his read on why they've seen Treasury yields rise a little bit, which I honestly think the longer range of the market has been doing this for a while. They really haven't cared about what on the short end is and what the Fed's doing. They've been pricing risk in there. His belief is investors should react to the data, not what the Fed hints. So we're probably going to see more market volatility and fewer policy clues coming out of the Fed going forward. Last but not least, he really finished up his speech going over what he sees as how the AI investment is reshaping the economy. AI CapEx is growing nearly 20% annually, which we've seen out of the three major players at this point that have reported: Google, Meta, and Microsoft. We'll hear Amazon tonight, and I would guess the same thing there, major spending in that area. I would not put a whole lot of credence into Amazon's numbers, because almost always the Amazon gets whopped on because they're willing to spend money to make money in the long run. And they've been proven to do that time and time again. That AI is boosting manufacturing and productivity. However, that is driving demand for chips and infrastructure. And that's one of the things that he's saying, that the Fed is unsure if inflation is temporary or more lasting because of the spend on the chips and the infrastructure and everything else. So the one thing is that AI is now influencing their monetary policy discussions as they go forward. So I think this was a really good speech. It was much more in depth than his first one last month, which he basically was like, all right, it was about a 10-minute speech and he was done, and he didn't really answer a lot of questions. I think he was able to come in this time and really show, okay, this is what we're now talking about as we're moving forward. And I think it's a more healthy system than, okay, we're just in there thinking about employment and inflation. They're really taking a look at where that inflation is coming from and what they feel like that's going to be over the long run.
Yeah, look, they're always going to say they're data dependent, but even with the 250 or 300 PhDs they have in the building, they still don't know. And it's been this way for decades.
Yeah.
And now they can apply AI models, and it's still not going to tell them, because typically major events, crises, whatever you want to call it, are from exogenous shocks that you can't throw into an AI model when that'll happen.
Yeah. No, you can't, but I think you can react a little bit better to it because you can analyze the data so much faster. What I would like to see is the Fed kind of change its model a little bit to maybe follow a little bit more along with Truflation's model, where they actually scarf data from other sources instead of relying on technology from the 1990s of making phone calls and sending emails to people. And because I get them all the time. I'm on the Fed's thing. I get these things all the time from SBA and the Fed asking me, are you hiring more? Are you this? Are you making capital expenditures and all that? And I'm like, that email that comes into, I read about once every 3 weeks. So if other business owners are like me, I don't really even deal with it.
But to me, that's opinion, not data.
It is.
You could say you're hiring.
Yep.
But you didn't say whether you're hiring one person or 100 people.
Yeah.
And those are factors that are important, because what if you can't hire 100 people? What if you can only hire 20? So those are just, it's like the Michigan sentiment number, which comes out right before, like 10 or 15 seconds. People have that data before it's actually published. But the whole idea is that it's all opinion.
Yeah.
The sentiment is at an all-time low, or 30-year low that we saw from last podcast, but it's all opinion. It's not data.
It's completely opinion. Yeah. It's not opinion, and there is no way of really measuring, okay, what's a good number, what's the bad number, and all that.
The morning, and then they were asked 3 questions.
They didn't have their coffee yet, or They got 17 other emails that day and they didn't answer. They were annoyed and didn't want to deal with it. Yeah, I agree. And you take all this stuff with a grain of salt. I love economics and I love to see what it is, but I also, my opinion on economists most of the time. I think the vast majority of them only think with one brain. You have 200 people in that building, in the $10 billion building or whatever the hell they've just built. You have 200 people in that building that all think exactly the same, basically. And I don't think there's enough dissenting opinions in there of it being that true collegiate environment where you're like, okay, we've got this versus that. I think we're starting to see a little bit more of that on the Fed governor's board. There's less of that one mind think. And you do have dissenters that are, hey, no, I don't believe in this. I think we should raise interest rates. And the rest of the crowd goes, you're a bunch of idiots. No, we're not doing that.
We got 6 weeks or so to the next. So
Yeah. And I wouldn't say anything happens at that because it's right before the election and they're damned if they do,
well, they'll
damned
have
if they don't.
meetings before the election.
Yeah. But they're damned if they do, damned if they don't. I could see some kind of move after that election in December, but yeah, they're not going to do anything before that. All right. All right, folks, thanks for joining us once again. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and we will see you guys back here the very next time.